Hey Kayla, so today's lesson, even though we're talking about multiplication and division, it still should be a pretty easy lesson because you have done fact families with addition and subtraction before, and that's kind of what we're looking at today. We are talking about relating multiplication and division today. So it says here you can use models to represent multiplication and division. Models are just pictures. Multiplication and division are opposite or inverse operations. Sorry, I don't know why my mouse is being weird. All right. You need to know that they are inverse operations. That's very important. So keep that in mind. We've talked about addition and subtraction being inverse because we check subtraction with addition. Multiplication and division are the same way. We can check our division with multiplication. So let's scroll down here and let's look at example 1. So Felix and Mei Ling went to an arcade. They played 4 games that cost $3 each. What was the total cost? So we are thinking about them playing 4 games that cost $3 each. So for one game, it's going to cost them $3. For another game, it's going to cost them $3, another $3, and another game, another $3. So we're dealing with equal groups of $3. That word each is so very important because usually when we read that word, that signifies that I'm dealing with equal groups, which means I'm going to need to multiply or divide. Now, if we think about what's happening in this problem, if they're playing 4 games and they each cost $3 and it's asking us for the total, then we know my answer has to be bigger. So if I know it's getting bigger, I know I cannot divide because that would make it smaller. I know I cannot subtract. So if we're thinking about addition and multiplication, we would want to pick multiplication because multiplication is going to involve getting bigger, our answer getting larger in equal groups, which is what we're talking about here. So they wanted to show you how to solve this with a model. So we're going to arrange counters in an array. An array is just made up of columns and rows. It's usually a picture, usually squares or circles, where we have columns and rows. And I know you've seen this a good bit, especially last year and probably in 2nd grade as well. So we're going to arrange these counters with 3 rows and 4 columns. So there's one column going up and down. Here's another column going up and down, another column, and another column. So I see that I have 3 rows. So here's my groups of $3. So one game costs $3, another game costs $3, another game costs $3, and another game costs $3. So we have our equal groups. Now remember, columns go up and down like they hold a house up. Columns go up and down, and rows go side to side. So columns are vertical, and rows are horizontal. So we could take and count the counters individually, but the easiest thing to do is let's count across the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 across the top. Let's count along the column on the side. 1, 2, 3. We do have to count this one. And then I would take and multiply these 2 numbers. And so how many total counters I have is 4 times 3, which is 12. So let's take a look at what this means for our related multiplication sentence. So we have 3 rows, I have 4 columns, and the total, 3 times 4, is 12. Now you do need to know that 3 and 4 are my factors. And remember, factors are 2 numbers that are multiplied together. My product is the answer to a multiplication problem. Just like a sum is the answer to an addition problem, difference is the answer to a subtraction problem, and product is the answer to a multiplication problem. Now, we can also turn this into a related division sentence, because I know if 3 times 4 equals to 12, then 12 divided by 3 is going to equal to 4. We can look at this division sentence backwards to check. 4 times 3 equals 12, which is correct. Now, it's very important that you learn the components of a division problem. So the number that is being divided, in 4th grade, it's our big number that we're being divided is our dividend. That is being divided, sorry. So the big number that is being divided is the dividend. The number that's doing the dividing is the divisor. And finally, our answer to a division problem is the quotient. Now, how I remember the difference between these two, because they're a little confusing to me. This, we know a quotient's the answer to a division problem, so I'm not really worried about that one. But these two can get kind of confusing. Excuse me. How I remember these two is in 4th grade, our dividend is the largest number. So my largest number is my dividend, and dividend is the larger word between dividend and divisor. So larger number is dividend. My dividend is actually the number that's being divided. Now the divisor, emphasis on the OR ending, makes me think of doctor. Like a doctor does surgery, they cut. So this is actually cutting up my dividend. I'm actually chopping up that dividend. So this is my number that's doing the dividing. It's kind of like my action verb right here. And then, as always, quotient is the answer. And so our total cost was 3 times 4, which is 12. And I'll stop it right here for a break, and we'll look at the back together. All right, so let's take a look at the back side of our lesson. All right, up here at the top, we see that a fact family is a set of 4 related multiplication and division facts that use the same 3 numbers. This is just like the fact families that you did in 1st, 2nd grade. If 3 plus 7 equals 10, then 7 plus 3 equals 10. And you could subtract 10 minus 3 is 7, and 10 minus 7 is 3. So let's look at these fact families for this example 2. Example 2 says LaTanya and her father made an array of buttons. Write a fact family for the sentence. Write a fact family for the array. So here's our array of buttons. Notice they have 4 columns and 3 rows, and we have equal amounts here. All right, so this is why we call it an array. So we're going to start off with our multiplication sentence in our fact family. We're going to say 3 rows times 4 columns equals to 12 buttons. Then we're going to use the commutative property of multiplication and say that if 3 times 4 is 12, then 4 times 3 is also 12. Now that we've done our 2 multiplication sentences of our fact family, now we need to do our division. So with division, it's just like subtraction. We do need to start out with that big number first. So my product in my multiplication sentence becomes my dividend in my division sentence. So 12 divided by 3, which is one of my factors in my multiplication problem over here, equals to 4, which is my other factor. So if I look at this backwards as a multiplication sentence, 4 times 3 equals 12. So 12 divided by 3 equals 4. All right, now we have to flip not my dividend and my divisor, but my divisor and my quotient. We need to flip those around and keep my big product from over here, keep it in front. And instead of saying 12 divided by 3, we're going to say 12 divided by 4 is 3. And again, if we check it by looking at the problem backwards, 3 times 4 is 12. All right. So it should be similar to what you've learned before. So let's take a look at, this next example. Okay, so Vanessa has 36 books. So we know Vanessa's total. She has 36 books to put on 4 shelves. The same number of books will be placed on each shelf. How many books will be on each shelf? So again, we see that word each, which is signaling that we're probably going to have to multiply or divide. Now think about this. We know Vanessa's total. We know that she's taking 36 books and she's putting them on 4 shelves. So if we know the total and we're dividing up these books on each shelf, we know our numbers here aren't going to get bigger. So we know we cannot multiply and we cannot add. So now we're thinking about either subtracting or dividing. So if I have 36 books and I'm putting them into groups of 4, I've got to put books on each shelf. That means that I need to divide 36 books by 4 shelves. Now, how we solve this is we think of this backwards. I'm going to say, instead of saying 36 divided by 4, I'm going to think backwards and say, well, what times 4 will give me 36? I'm going to use an unknown right here. What times 4 will give me 36? Well, 4 times blank equals 36. We've learned that 4 times 9 is 36. So, with knowing about fact families, the number that 4 and 36 have in common is 9. So, if 4 times 9 is 36, and we have our 36 and our 4, our 36 as our dividend and our 4 as our divisor, we know that the other number that's left is 9. 9 times 4 equals 36. So Vanessa will place 9 books on each shelf. All right, so let's scroll down and let's look at our 2 examples right here. Write a fact family for each array. So the first step is to count our arrays. So let's go across and up and down on our paint palette here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have 7 on top. 1, 2, 3, and remember I still have to count this corner one, 3 on the side. So now I have my 2 numbers for my fact family, and I know if I multiply them, I will find out how many colors there are in all here. So I'm going to start out with my multiplication sentence always. 7 times 3 is 21. Now I'm going to use the commutative property of multiplication, which is 3 times 7 equals 21. Now that I've done both of my multiplication sentences, I'm going to do my division. And remember, division is just like subtraction. I have to start with that big number first. So 21 divided by, and you can pick either factor, 3 equals to 7, the number that's missing right now. And then I'm going to keep my big number first again for this last division sentence and say that 21 divided by, not 3 because I used it, 21 divided by 7 equals to 3. If you wanted to double check, you could look at it backwards. 7 times 3 equals 21. 3 times 7 equals 21. All right, now let's look at number 2. Now notice on number 2, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 on top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 on the side. Don't forget to count that one for up and down and across. So my first multiplication sentence, my first number sentence, I'm going to start with multiplication in my fact family. So 5 times 5 is 25. Now you'll notice they only gave me 2 lines right here. That's because if I do the commutative property and I flip my 2 factors, if I swap these 5s, they're still going to be 5s. So there's no use to rewrite that. So now I'm going to skip straight to my division sentence. I'm going to start with that big number. I'm going to pick one of these factors, which happens to be the same. And what times 5 gives me 25? 5. Now, before we wrap up, I want to remind you, I've posted the properties of multiplication in our current classwork. You definitely need to be studying those. Right here, let's answer. How are multiplication and division related? Multiplication and division are, like addition and subtraction, they are inverse operations. And you know that inverse means opposite. So check out those properties of multiplication. Make sure you're studying vocabulary. I will send you a snapshot of those, but there's a lot of important vocabulary on what I posted for the properties of multiplication as well. So I hope this has helped. If you have any problems, please let me know. See you later.